Okay, let's unpack this. Ever feel kind of lost in just the sea of information, when you're trying to get your head around something new? Well, today we're diving into the secret weapon for navigating that. It's the literature review. Now, it might sound a bit like dusty academic work, but trust me, it's actually a superpower for anyone who really wants to understand a topic efficiently and, avoid going down those rabbit holes that others have already explored.
That's absolutely right. And for this deep dive, we've pulled together quite a range of perspectives on this. It's an essential skill. We're looking at why it matters, how you actually do it, and then how to make sense of everything you find. We're drawing from academic analyses and practical guides, and even thinking about how, well, broader information sources fit into the whole picture.
Exactly. So our mission today is really to give you the core insights, kind of the shortcut to understanding why researchers and really anyone seeking deep knowledge bothers with this process. We'll cover the most effective ways to conduct a review and, crucially, how to interpret what you actually uncover. Think of it as your personal guide to mastering the art of understanding what's already known. So let's get right to the heart of it. Why even do a literature review in the first place?
Well, fundamentally, a literature review helps you to find your knowledge gap. It all starts with a laser-focused question. The sources we've looked at really emphasize that it centers on a specific research question, or maybe a hypothesis. That clarity is just fundamental.
Yeah, it's like charting a course, isn't it? You need that precise destination. You need to know exactly what you're trying to find out. And the literature review, that's what shows your destination is actually worth reaching. It backs up the significance, the novelty of your work.
Exactly. It demonstrates why your question is important within the field and what potential impact answering it could have. You're basically building a case supported by what's already known, arguing for why your specific inquiry deserves attention, what the literature calls intellectual merit and broad impact.
Right, so you're showing your work isn't just floating in space, it builds on something substantial. And a huge part of that, I guess, is figuring out what's already been done.
Oh, absolutely.
One source we saw puts it quite strongly, doesn't it? Saying, we have a sincere responsibility to dig up nearly every relevant piece of information.
It does. It's about due diligence. You don't want to invest time and effort, rediscovering something that's already well established in the field.
Makes sense. You want to add something new, not just echo what's out there.
Precisely. And it's not just about avoiding duplication either. If you have a hypothesis, the literature is where you find the groundwork, the supporting evidence. Think of it like this, using an analogy one source mentioned. You want to prove your research elephant, that's your main topic, exists and is important. And then you need to justify why your specific giraffe, the factor you're investigating, is the right way to understand that elephant.
Wow, okay, framing it like that really sharpens the focus. So you use existing research to say, look, we know this big thing, this elephant is important, and here's why this particular angle I'm taking, this giraffe, is relevant and, likely to give us new insights.
Exactly that. You draw on prior work to explain why that factor matters, why you're using it to understand the main topic, and even the direction of the relationship you expect to find. It's all based on what others have already explored. You're building your argument on a foundation of established knowledge.
And that extends even to the tools you use, right? Like if you're measuring something, say anxiety,
Yes.
you need to look at the literature on the specific questionnaires or methods. Who developed them? How were they tested? Are they reliable?
Absolutely. You have to justify not just your question, but your approach too. The literature review provides that justification.
Yeah.
It shows your methods are sound, they've been validated, maybe used effectively by others before.
Okay, so the why is pretty clear. It's foundational. So how do you actually, do one? Where do you start?
Well, our sources outline a pretty clear starting point,
Right.
identifying keyword phrases and the core concepts related to your research question.
Right, the search terms. You need the right bait to catch the right fish, so to speak.
Exactly. And then it's about exploring different places, different information sources.
And we're talking a real mix here, aren't we? Everything from physically going through library shelves, which, sounds almost ancient now,
It does a bit.
to the incredible power of modern electronic databases.
Oh, the efficiency is remarkable now, especially university systems. You plug in your keywords and bam, you get this vast landscape of research at your fingertips.
It's amazing. And it's interesting how one source drew parallels with something we use every day, Google.
Yeah, that was a neat point. The way Google ranks information based on relevance, considering citations or links, how recent it is, how well organized, It actually mirrors a lot of the underlying principles of academic search.
Hmm.
Google basically took that scholarly approach and just scaled it up for the whole web.
That ease of access is incredible, but when we're doing this kind of deep dive, the types of sources we look at become really important. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the variety is just huge. It's definitely not just academic journal articles and books anymore.
No, not at all.
You've got actual literature reviews themselves, which kind of summarize whole areas. Then there's digital media, video interviews, documentaries maybe,
hmm They can offer unique perspectives, absolutely.
EA articles, reports, dissertations, abstracts, even initial definitions you might quickly grab from somewhere like Wikipedia.
Right, and other non-academic internet resources, too. It is a vast landscape.
Mm.
And understanding the role of each source type is key. As our sources point out, Wikipedia can be useful for a quick, basic definition because it often reflects a broad consensus.
The starting point.
Exactly, a starting point. But for serious academic understanding, you absolutely need to dive deeper into those peer-reviewed specialized sources. Think of academic databases like curated libraries. The information there has gone through some kind of vetting process, unlike the Wild West of the open web.
That's a crucial distinction, the quick overview versus the in-depth vetted info. And the sources also talk about primary versus secondary sources. What's the key difference there?
Well, primary sources are the original work, the actual study, the researchers presenting their findings for the first time. Secondary sources are interpretations or summaries of that original work. So lecture notes, many textbooks, they often summarize primary research.
Okay.
When you do a literature review, you'll likely use both. But it's really vital to understand that difference, to trace ideas back to their origin and grasp the context.
Right. Now, when you're just starting out this process, how many sources are we even talking about? It sounds potentially overwhelming. Our sources mention an initial scope of maybe locating around 50 sources.
Yeah, as a starting point.
And there was even that historical anecdote about some doctoral programs informally expecting, over 100 articles reviewed? That sounds like a mountain.
It does, and it really highlights that there isn't some fixed magic number set in stone, like a Bible dictating you must read X sources.
Hmm.
The real goal isn't quantity for quantity's sake. It's thoroughness. As one source put it, ideally you have to review every relevant piece.
But how do you know when you've hit that point? When is it enough? When have you reviewed every relevant piece, practically speaking?
That's a great question. It often comes down to reaching a point of saturation or diminishing returns. You start seeing the same names, the same core ideas, the same citations appearing again and again in different papers.
Ah, okay. So when new sources aren't really adding significant new information or perspectives.
Exactly. That's usually a good sign you've covered the key ground for your specific question.
Okay, so you've gathered this potentially large pile of sources. Now the task is actually making sense of it all. Our sources talk about summarizing and organizing, and this idea of an annotated bibliography comes up. That sounds more involved than just a list of references.
So much more. An annotated bibliography goes way beyond just paraphrasing the abstract that the author wrote. It involves your critical evaluation of each source. You're assessing, its significance to your research, the strength of the author's claims, the structure, the rigor of their work.
So it's your analysis on top of a summary.
Precisely. It offers much more insight than the original abstract alone. It forces you to engage critically right from the start.
That makes it a much more active process. And then the sources also emphasize grouping your findings, right, by theme or topic?
Yes, that's crucial for synthesis. So if you were looking at, say, teacher turnover,
Okay.
you might group the literature into categories like workload issues, student factors, administrative support, salary, things like that.
Right, organizing it thematically.
Exactly. And this thematic organization lets you see the bigger picture. You can see how different studies connect, where there are overlaps, maybe where there are gaps or inconsistencies.
Which leads nicely into the next really crucial stage, interpreting the literature, the critical review part. So it's not just about reporting what others found, but really digging into how solid those findings are and what they actually mean in context.
Absolutely. You're moving from summary to critique and synthesis.
So what are some of the key things you look for during that critical review phase?
Well, checking for consistency is vital. Internal consistency,
Name.
meaning you look at the internal reliability of the study's interpretations. Do their conclusions logically follow from their data? You look at the consistency of their data collection methods and also the accuracy and consistency of the measurement instruments they used. Are they reliable, valid, were they used properly?
Okay, so you're really examining the research from the inside out, seeing if it all holds together logically.
Exactly. So, for instance, a red flag might be if they use different ways to measure the same concept in different parts of the study without a good reason.
Or if their interpretation in the discussion section seems to maybe overstate what the data actually shows.
Precisely those kinds of disconnects. You also want to consider generalizability.
How widely the findings might apply.
Yes. Are these findings likely specific to the small group they studied, or could they potentially hold true in other contexts for other populations?
And replicability, too, right? Could someone else repeat the study and likely get similar results?
That's another key aspect of rigor. And the sources also really highlight the importance of identifying gaps in the discussion within papers and paying close attention to the limitations section.
Which sometimes feels like researchers just listing excuses, but you're saying it's important.
Very important. It's actually a sign of strong, thoughtful work when researchers are upfront and discuss the limitations of their own study. It shows they've critically assessed their findings, and often that limitations section points directly towards future research directions.
Ah, okay. So limitations aren't necessarily a weakness, but more an honest assessment of the study's boundaries.
Exactly. And the critical review also involves actively looking for conflicts between studies. Where do findings disagree?
And trying to understand why there might be inconsistencies, different methods, different populations.
Precisely. You're trying to make sense of the disagreements.
Right.
And then, crucially, you're also identifying the consistent patterns across multiple studies. You summarize those patterns. This whole process helps you determine the current state of understanding in the field.
And where your research, or maybe just your deeper exploration, if you're not doing formal research, can actually add something new.
Yes, that filling the gap idea we mentioned earlier. Understanding what's missing or what needs clarification.
So the literature review, it's really not a passive reading task at all. It's this active, critical process. Questioning, analyzing, synthesizing.
Putting together all the pieces of the existing knowledge puzzle.
Yeah, to build that solid foundation for whatever comes next, whether it's new research or just a deeper personal understanding.
And, here's where it gets really interesting. Because these skills you hone, doing a literature review, identifying those key questions, exploring diverse sources, critically evaluating information, synthesizing, what you find they are just incredibly valuable, way beyond formal research settings.
Absolutely. So just to quickly recap the key takeaways for everyone listening, the main purpose, the why of a literature review is really to justify your focus, make sure you're not just repeating old work, and give you that comprehensive map of what's already known. The process involves, strategic searching across lots of different types of sources, applying a critical eye to evaluate what you find.
And then synthesizing it, bringing it all together in a clear, organized way, often thematically. And what's fascinating here is how this process empowers you, the listener. It gives you the tools to get up to speed quickly on pretty much any topic you're curious about, and to really appreciate the depth and rigor behind credible information versus just opinions.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, here's a final thought to maybe mull over. How could you apply these same principles from literature reviews in your own life? Think about identifying your core questions, deliberately seeking out different perspectives, critically evaluating the information you find, and then putting those pieces together. Could you use that approach to better understand complex issues you care about, or maybe navigate a big decision you're facing, or even just learn about a new field you're interested in? Even without writing a formal paper, could that focused effort to explore what's already out there give you a much clearer, more insightful perspective? So what does this all mean? Something to think about.